Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed paid a visit to International Mining and Technology Expo. And Ambassador Mohammed Dril says the peace agreement has laid deep foundation for lasting peace in Ethiopia. Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I am Binyam Getana. Thank you for joining us. And now the news in full. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed visited the International Mining and Technology Expo. It is to be recalled that the 2022 Expo has been opened on Thursday at the Millennium Hall, Addis Ababa, in attendance of President Sahle-Work Zewde and other senior government officials. More than 270 local and foreign companies are participating in this expo. The expo is being held for the first time in Ethiopia. The expo is expected to serve as a platform in promoting Ethiopia's mineral resources. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Mines, Engineer Tackle Oma, stated that the Prime Minister has also encouraged the participating mining producers. According to the Ministry of Mines and Petroleum, the 2022 expo is scheduled to be open until Saturday. Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister and Ministry of Foreign Affairs Demeke paid a visit to Consulate General of Ethiopia in Dubai on Friday. Demeke expressed that the work being carried out by the Consulate General Office and the Community Association to protect the rights and interests of the citizen is encouraging. He called on all members and organizations of the diaspora to work in cooperation with the Consulate General Office and the Community Association to protect the rights and interests of the citizens, since the Ethiopian government alone cannot solve the demands of the citizen with its limited resources. It has been stated that the Consulate General Office is working in cooperation with the Ethiopian Community Association in Dubai and the Northern Emirates and the Ethiopian Embassy and the Community Association in Abu Dhabi, as well as stakeholders to protect the rights and interests of citizens. Moving on, the National Security Advisor to Prime Minister, Ambassador Redwan Hussein, said that aid is flowing to Tigray like no other time. The National Security Advisor tweeted that 35 trucks of food and 3 trucks of medicine arrived in Shire. Flights are allowed, Redwan stated, adding that services are being reconnected. He noted that the agreement just provides opportunity to enhance services. No hindrance whatsoever regarding aid, he reaffirmed it and pointed out that some corners don't seem happier by the fact that African wisdoms brought a success in Pretoria and hassling to spoil the spirit. Likewise, the peace agreement reached in Ethiopia will not only end the war that has been going on for the past 2 years, but also lays foundation for lasting peace in the country. During his stay with ETV, Ambassador Mohammed Dril, a member of the National Dialogue Commission in Ethiopia, thanked those who contributed to the success of the peace agreement and stated that everyone should play its part for the peace sustainability and effective implementation of the peace agreement. Talking to the ambassador, Johannes Fenton has compiled the following story. Take a look.
It is said that the agreement between the federal government and the TPLF mediated by the African Union has not only ended the 2 years war in the country, but also laid a deep foundation for lasting peace. Ambassador Mohammed Dril, a member of the Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission, during his stay with ETV, said the following about the implications of the peace agreement.
Now that an agreement has been reached between, a peace deal has been signed in Pretoria, South Africa, between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF. It is a very important milestone in itself. It means the cessation of hostilities, the end of a war that has caused the death of lives of innocent civilians as well, not only the parties engaged in the conflict per se. It has also affected not only the region of Tigray, but also the Amhara and Tigray and Afar as well. So now that peace is the catchword, peace has at last prevailed in Ethiopia. We all have to enhance that peace, and we pray God to make peace prevalent not only in Ethiopia but also in the Horn of Africa and the entire world.
Recalling the damage happened in Tigray, Amhara and Afar regions due to the 2 years long war in Ethiopia, Ambassador Mahmoud said that much is expected from the society and the media for lasting peace in Ethiopia and for the peace agreement to be properly implemented.
We have to work towards the enhancing of the peace that has been, the peace deal that has been signed by the Ethiopian federal government and the TPLF. The media especially should not spoil or play the role of spoiler in this towards this end. It has to enhance the message of fraternity, of the healing process, of healing the wounds, the deep wounds that the societies have sustained, and focus on the future, the bright future that awaits Ethiopia.
The ambassador, who said that the peace agreement reached in Ethiopia has great role for the realization of lasting peace in the country, reiterated the role of the peace agreement for its positive impact for the image of the Horn of Africa.
Our neighbor Somalia is suffering severely from the attacks of Al-Shabaab, which targets civilians and government officials as well. And for an investor who is outside the region, when these news comes out from the Horn of Africa, the Horn will be generally considered as a region of conflict, a region of war, and losing the opportunities of investment, of foreign direct investment, has its own implications in the economies of the region. Therefore, all of us, we have to work towards the enhancing of the peace that has been, the peace deal that has been signed by the Ethiopian federal government and the TPLF.
Ambassador Dri also thanked those who played a great role for the realization of the peace agreement between the government of Ethiopia and the TPLF.
We would like to thank the African Union, the role that Olusegun Obasanjo has played with his team, the former Vice President of South Africa, Ngoka, that is the right pronunciation of her family name, and of course former President Uhuru Kenyatta, and all the others who have been part and parcel of this very important milestone in bringing about peace in Ethiopia. Of course, the commitment of the Ethiopian government as well as the goodwill and commitment of the TPLF.
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour, and moving on. A scholar says the peace deal signed between Ethiopian government and the TPLF is a victory for Ethiopia's friends. African researcher Tegenu Gosa told that the peace pact is a milestone that reverses the entire course of Ethiopia's current diplomatic and political affairs. Goshu Melesau gives us the latest.
For the Horn of Africa.
On November 2, 2022, the federal government and Tigray Liberation Front TPLF signed ceasefire agreement in Pretoria to end the 2-year war in the country's north. The peace deal is set to ensure truth, reconciliation and healing in post-conflict Ethiopia. The successful completion of peace truce is expected to change the entire course of Ethiopia's current affairs. Talking to ETV, historian Tegenu Gosa said the peace deal signed between Ethiopian government and TPLF is a victory for Ethiopia's friends who stood behind Ethiopia during hard times and ashamed its historical enemies.
Remember, when this conflict started, the so-called global media outlets, many of them came out, invited analysts, and predicted that with this civil war, Ethiopia is going to fall apart and Ethiopia is going to disintegrate, and all kinds of calamities, all kinds of predictions were out there. And with this peace deal and its eventual implementation, Ethiopia has disproved all these hexes being told at the beginning of this conflict by global media outlets and their analysts. It's a victory for Ethiopian friends far away. It's specifically, I should mention 3 countries here, and even more. It's a victory for China. It's victory for Russians. It's victory for Indians. These countries specifically firmly stood behind Ethiopia at world stage, especially in the United Nations Security Council meetings, one after another. These countries stood by the cause of Ethiopia. It's a victory for African brothers and sisters who were concerned for Ethiopia and who tried their level best to help.
Taganu highlighted that the peace pact is a milestone that reverses the entire course of Ethiopia's current diplomatic and political affairs.
This peace deal is a milestone. It's a milestone in a way that it's going to reverse the course of Ethiopian current political and diplomatic affair. And first and foremost, this deal is a victory for Ethiopian people as a whole. Because Ethiopian people in this 2 years long conflict paid the heaviest price and witnessed all kinds of atrocities on both sides. So Ethiopian people need to have a relief from this one, and Ethiopian people need to deserve really to live in peace and harmony.
Ethiopia has manifested extraordinary resilience to overcome multifaceted challenges.
Ethiopia once again manifested extraordinary resilience as a nation in withstanding and eventually overcoming challenge, massive challenge, which is now an internal one. Ethiopia has overcome a lot of serious threats, challenges, invasions from outside, and at times, of course, internally. This time, it's an internal challenge. It's an internal conflict. It's unfortunate, but we overcame it.
Taganu is hopeful that the peace deal carries undue diplomatic pressure.
There was a lot of pressure, diplomatic pressure on Ethiopia, wave of pressures. And this deal is going to definitely help in at least reducing, easing these pressures that's coming mostly from the West, Western countries.
Ethiopia should strive for the successful implementation of the pact to sustain its diplomatic victory, he added.
The destructive war in the northern part of Ethiopia comes to an end with an agreement signed in Pretoria, South Africa. Amidst of this adverse situation, Ethiopia's economic development endeavors are proved resilient, of which is the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is nearing completion. For more of God-related issues and other current matters of the country, watch us on Addis News Hour of ETV Language Channel.
The 2022 Ethiopian Great Run will take place this November. ETV English is provide live reporting, exclusive interview, sport assortments, and other related activities in the competition. We are also ready to make a report to show the significance of Ethiopian Great Run in cementing or boosting the sport diplomacy of Ethiopia.
Welcome back once again. You're watching Addis News Hour. Step into another story. Global Partnership for Education has announced a one-year financial assistance project to support the homegrown school feeding program in Ethiopia. Ministry of Education, Global Partnership for Education and other stakeholders held on Friday achievement review, closeouts and the launching of a new financial backing project of the homegrown school feeding program in Ethiopia.
It's really a privilege for us to be working with all of you. As you know, as Jenny has said, we provided a grant of 20 million in the first phase of this program, in the school meal initiative, the school feeding program. And it's not just this one actually. We have other programs also that are being supported by GPE in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of our priority countries, as perhaps you know.
And during the project closeout and launching event, it was indicated that the homegrown inclusive school feeding program has been successful and satisfactory.
There is a golden saying, investing in posterity is building a nation on unwavering foundation. This exhibits the significance of capitalizing on children who are the fruits of the country that can take over the nation with the future. The way people nurture children purely determines the future of the nation, because if they are raised in such a way that they could develop sense of patriotism, the country will be built on dependable basis.
In addition, it has been stated that other related supplies such as educational materials, personal hygiene materials for female students, and other supports were provided to the school, included the project. Another development, the peace agreement reached between the government of Ethiopia and TPLF, is a great victory for Ethiopia and important for Africa's ability to solve its own problems, the Scope Independent News Editor-Chief Thompson said. The Scope Independent News Editor-in-Chief Alistair Thompson, who recently visited the war-torn areas like Alamata and its surroundings, told Ethiopian news agency that the peace talks in South Africa were more effective than the international community expected. He also appreciated the African Union, which has been facilitating the peace talks, adding that it was an extremely successful process. According to him, it is important for Africa to solve its own problems and gives confidence that the African Union can give solution to African problems. The editor added that he has discovered from his trip that the genuine possibility of peace will nurture in the near future. For the journalist, this particular situation has led all concerned bodies to understand much more clearly that their role is not to inflame the situation. Therefore, the international community should stop and down the rhetoric. And the president of Ethiopian Association of Civil Engineers, Jonas Ayaleo, said realizing African engineering code is critical to bolster the construction sector in Africa. The 8th edition of African Engineering Week and the 6th African Engineers Week, aiming at accelerating sustainable infrastructure development in Africa together, concluded today. Habtama Shagre takes us to the journey.
Linkages and smart partnerships.
After a 5-day successful engineering deliberation in Addis Ababa, African engineers have been discussing how to implement African construction code in the continent. Talking to TV English, President of Ethiopian Association of Civil Engineers, Jonas Ayaleo, said the 6th African Engineers Week is vital to discuss engineering issues in Africa.
As an African continent, we don't have our own code of engineering, so we are using Eurocode and the American code. So now they are trying to work on the African code of standards. So after establishing all this code of standards, it's going to have a great impact on the quality and also project implementation on the plan time and also the cost. So we Africans should focus on establishing the African code of standards.
According to Jonas, African engineers have been discussing the major bottlenecks of the engineering sector in Africa, and they have shared vast experiences in the construction sector.
The African professionals has an opportunity to learn on different universities in Africa, also in different Asian and European universities. So it will give a bridge for such professionals to get an access of education, of engineering and science. So they are working and privileging the women to enter to the engineering and science fields, and also the young engineers to select engineering science. So having so many engineers and scientists will solve African problems.
The president of Federation of African Engineering Organization, Caroline Dorcas Bow-Chedid, for her part said the construction sector in Africa is facing challenges.
The problems that we are facing in the engineering sector are many. Let me just point out a few. One of them, for example, is the lack of regulation in some countries. So in some countries, you don't have to be registered as a professional engineer to practice engineering. So anybody can practice. So some people may be good enough and some may be not so good. And engineering practice is such that if you are not really capable, you can do more harm than good. You may cost the country more money than you should. So regulation is one issue that we want African countries to take up very much. The other problem is the fact that we have engineering work being done by other countries. So a design comes, money comes for a project, it comes from another country, they do the design and everything in that country, they bring it, they bring their people, they come and build in your country. That does not benefit the engineers in that country, and therefore they lack opportunities to grow as engineers, and it doesn't benefit the economies of these countries very much because most of the money is going to another country. And so it's one of the things that we are trying to encourage other African countries to look at. Use your own indigenous engineering practices for your construction, for your design, for everything, so that they can also learn, it can grow your economy, and you get work for your people. And so this is a real problem in some African countries, and it's one of the things that we are advocating that governments should look at.
According to Caroline, African engineers need to capitalize their cooperation to solve African problems which are facing the construction sector.
Engineers are the ones that are involved in building this infrastructure. So they are right at the table and they can see the things that are needed. And so it's their role to point out what is needed at each stage. Sometimes they may see it better than governments. They are sitting back looking at it, developing the roads, developing the links and so on, and they can then advise governments. As a Federation of African Engineering Organizations, this is also one of the things that we aim to do.
The 8th edition of African Engineers Week and the 6th African Engineers Week, aiming at accelerating sustainable infrastructure development in Africa together, concluded today.
Yes, he's an engineer, he's infrastructure.
In our business segment, Ethio-Djibouti Railways has announced that it is preparing to commence the transportation of perishable goods, including fruits and vegetables that require refrigerated containers. Cargo transport provided by the Ethio-Djibouti Railways is preferable in terms of speed, price and safety of goods when compared to track transportation. Speaking to Ethiopian news agency Ethio-Djibouti Railways, CEO Abdi Zanaba said the transport service being provided by the company has been extensively contributing to Ethiopia's import and export trade activities, particularly in improving the nation's income and in transporting vital goods. He further pointed out that Ethio-Djibouti Railways is gearing towards increasing capacity. The company has now been able to create capacity of transporting 240 vehicles with a single trip. The CEO also said that Ethio-Djibouti Railways is doing its part to expediting regional integration by strengthening the ties between Ethiopia and Djibouti. A new flower is a seat for African Union and many international embassies.
We have to protect our green legacy. The green legacy is very essential for one country.
Concepts and features for the park is something that people have to take part in.
It's so beautiful and also it's so nice.
It's very nice, yeah. It's a very nice park.
and very diverse and very green. It brings something extra, and I think, like I said, it's a good spot to relax with the green and with the nice view you have. Yeah, I would recommend it to come here.
This place is pretty nice because I like the water show. I like the decoration. For example, that is really cool.
Lots of experience have been enjoyed by people who have come across from different areas.
Come visit, see this place. It's pretty, it's worth it. Come here.
Welcome back once again. Now step into another news. Learning Luganda, the most widely spoken native language in Uganda, is essential to communicate with relatives in the home country, noted the volunteer in Adelaide. Teach Luganda to young people, which helps create a sense of identity. Tigis Nisa tells us more from Africa News.
The Ugandan communities in Australia have started a language school to ensure links to their native country remain strong. At weekends, volunteers in Adelaide teach Luganda to young people, which helps to create a sense of identity.
Because of that reason of helping our children identify with where they come from, communicate with their relatives who don't speak English, that is why we felt that we needed to have the drive of teaching them how to speak the local language.
Again? For others, it's about preserving a language whilst creating a sense of community.
To preserve language is critical for the person's self-expression, for the identity, and also most importantly for socialization, because you need to speak a language to be part of a community.
Learning Luganda, the most widely spoken native language in Uganda, is essential to communicate with relatives in the home country.
We want our kids to be able to relate to people back home, and we don't want them to lose their cultural identity. So when they go back home, it's easy for them to relate with people back home. We are trying to bring home to our foreign home.
This year, Uganda celebrates 60 years of independence, and Ugandans all over the world are marking the occasion.
Finally, officials say African Union Chairman and Senegal President Macky Sall is said to attend the upcoming G20 summit in Bali. Sall would have two hats at the meeting representing both the AU and Senegal, one of the officials told Reuters news agency on Friday. The visit, his first to a G20 summit, comes as Africa looks to hold wealthier nations to account for their climate pledges. The summit in Bali, Indonesia, takes place on November 15 to 16, overlapping the second week of the COP27 conference. Senegal is in discussion with G20 members about a deal to support its transition to low-carbon energy. In September, while addressing the 77th session of the UN's General Assembly, Sall had advocated for a third for the AU within the G20 so that Africa can at last be represented where decisions are taken that affect 1.4 billion Africans. Now a recap of the top stories once again. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed paid a visit to International Mining and Technology Expo. And Ambassador Mohammed Ril says the peace agreement has laid a deep foundation for lasting peace in Ethiopia. Once again, you've been watching at this news hour. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye for now.